Penguin fans need to sell a home or buy one? Go with the top producing team in the nation, the Amy Wenger team with eXp Realty. Serving Northeast Ohio for 28 years, experience real estate that achieves your goals and exceeds your expectations. Call today and tell them you subscribe to the Penguin Nation Fans podcast, and they will ensure that you are treated like family. Call 330-681-6090 or visit amysguarantee.com. Go Gwins. All right, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Penguin Nation Fans podcast. As always, I am your host, Gino Leo, and you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at YTown Nation. And don't forget to check out my written work over on Red Shirt Sports today. We're breaking down the Missouri Valley Football Conference preseason poll as that released officially this morning. I just finished up listening to some of the interviews this morning on the center stage in South Dakota. I believe Zoom interviews are taking place this afternoon, and hopefully the Missouri Valley will post those on their YouTube channel, so be on the lookout for that. A representative for Southern Illinois, interviewed the coaches and players for every single Valley team. So if you're interested in looking at what Doug Phillips and Beau Brungard had to say, go to Southern Illinois' page on Twitter and Instagram. It was a really good interview, well done. I'm not sure who the individual was that interviewed them, but he did a great job. Make sure to check that out. You can probably find that on social media for Southern Illinois. And then I'm sure there's South Dakota State representatives there. There's South Dakota representatives there. So there will probably be a lot of content that flows out either later today or tomorrow. But the big thing is that the preseason poll is out. We had some preseason accolades drop yesterday with Craig Haley and Stats Perform releasing some preseason watch list, preseason All-American, that type sort of things. But first off, in the official preseason poll, YSU checks in at number 3, despite returning arguably the most important player in the FCS. Today, I'll break down the official poll, biggest takeaways, my own preseason rankings, and why I think YSU is being slightly overlooked. So let's run through this entire preseason poll, see where everybody ranks, and then I'll give sort of my 2 cents on each team and where I think teams should be ranked preseason heading into 2026. So number 1 was South Dakota State. They had 28 first place votes. Number 2, Illinois State, 3 first place votes. Number 3, Youngstown State, 0 first place votes. Number 4, North Dakota, 2 first place votes. Number 5, South Dakota, 2 first place votes. Number 6 is Southern Illinois with 1 first place vote. Number 7, Northern Iowa. Number 8, Indiana State. And then rounding out the Missouri Valley Football Conference preseason poll for 2026 is Murray State at number 9. So overall, number 3 is not disrespectful whatsoever. I think South Dakota State, based on their history and tradition and what they've been able to accomplish at the highest level, they deserve to be that preseason number 1. They have the most proven roster, strong quarterback, elite trench play. My biggest surprise here, and there's always some sort of bulletin board material for Youngstown State, it's like we never garner the respect we deserve in some way every preseason at this media day. 0 first place votes for Youngstown State. Now, you look down these standings, Illinois State got 3. That makes sense after the run that they had in the postseason. A lot of people put a lot of stock into what happened in last season. I don't think that's a great way to view things, but whatever. I'm fine with that. After what they did in the postseason, they earned the right to be ranked within that top 3 preseason. North Dakota got 2. No problem with that. I think North Dakota has an incredibly high ceiling that depends on how Jerry Kaminsky performs, but I won't get into too much details. I'm going to talk about each of these teams. But even South Dakota and Southern Illinois at least got 1 preseason first place vote. Youngstown State didn't get a single vote. And the reason I have an issue with this is because we returned the best quarterback in the FCS, our entire starting offensive line, our top running back, 2 starting tight ends who are phenomenal pass catchers, and then plenty of defensive talent. if we're not getting preseason votes this season, at least one. Like, I could care less about how many first place votes we get. Some of these other teams at least got one. Southern Illinois, they got picked to finish 6th, and they got at least one vote for first place. So to me, if we have the best quarterback in the FCS and we're not getting a single first place vote, I just don't think we're ever going to get it. And that's why preseason polls are sort of irrelevant, because who cares, honestly? Youngstown State is always looked at as this team that, yeah, they're a good program, but are they ever going to get back to the level that they once were? And I think that sort of reflects in the fact that we didn't get a single preseason vote for first place, but I like the placement at number 3. I personally would have us at number 2. But again, that's a decent placement. Just don't understand why not a single person voted for us to win the conference. It's a bit interesting to me. So let's start with Illinois State. The discussion there, preseason ranked number 2 here. I think Illinois State is benefiting a lot from last year's playoff run. They have a lot of supporting cast on that offense that will support the new quarterback, but those concerns are legitimate in Normal, Illinois. You got to replace Tommy Rittenhouse, record-setting quarterback for Illinois State. He was phenomenal all season for the Redbirds. I have a hard time believing, no offense to Gage Roy or Beckham Pellant, that those two are going to be able to replace and match the production that Tommy Rittenhouse had. Now, I don't think you need to be an absolute gamer to be the quarterback at Illinois State with the supporting cast they have, but you need to be able to make very good decisions. And these quarterbacks, both Gage Roy and Beckham Pellant, are lacking that experience at the collegiate level, and that's a bit concerning. This is a conference that returns a significant amount of talent at quarterback, and not just in the conference. These are some of the best quarterbacks in the FCS. Beau Brungard, he's the best quarterback in the FCS. DJ Williams, among the elite in the FCS. Chase Mason, even Jerry Kaminsky, I think, had a phenomenal offseason and could take that next step for North Dakota. To me, I have a hard time seeing Beckham Pellant and Gage Roy hanging with some of these elite quarterbacks when it comes down to it, because the Missouri Valley, we know how thin the margins are. It comes down to these fourth quarter games, and you need a quarterback that can conduct a game-winning drive. Can Beckham Pellant and Gage Roy do that? I don't know. We'll have to see. And then the defensive line questions are significant in a conference that is built by defensive line play and offensive line play. You need talent in the trenches, and that's why I would struggle if I had a vote in this preseason poll ranking Illinois State ahead of Youngstown State. YSU has talent back on the offensive line and the defensive line and returns the best quarterback in the FCS. Illinois State doesn't have that, and they're sort of reaping the benefits of that magical postseason run. I know that they got some big-time money donations after that run, and that's a brutal schedule. I mean, what did they play? 17 games last season. We heard Coach Spack talk today at Media Day about, they basically played an NFL season in their offseason as a result of that deep postseason run and ultimately falling short of their goal. It really drained the team and shortened that offseason. I'm curious to see if Illinois State is going to be able to back all of this preseason hype. And I've talked about this. I've been open on my podcast about how I do my preseason rankings. The things that I value the most is who's coming back on the offensive line, who's coming back on the defensive line, and quarterback. And that's why if I had to say the top 3 in this preseason poll would be South Dakota State, Youngstown State, and North Dakota. And I know that there are legitimate questions for Youngstown State on defense, but I just think the trench talent is a solid foundation for a new defensive coordinator in Ryan Remedio. And then North Dakota, Eric Schmidt's a defensive wizard. I love what he's been able to do at UND outside of those recruiting tampering violations we heard about a couple weeks ago. But I think they have the right to be ranked in the top 3. But outside of that, some other storylines here. Southern Illinois, I think, is getting underrated in this preseason poll. To have them at number 6 behind South Dakota it is a bit disrespectful, especially when you consider the fact that they bring back DJ Williams. They have strong skill position talent, one of the better running back rooms in the FCS. I thought they did an excellent job of reloading at wide receiver through the transfer portal. Defensively, their defensive line did not impress me last season. I have a hard time believing that their defensive line can be worse than what it was last season. And I think some of the transfers they brought in are going to make a big time impact for Southern Illinois. So if I had to rank them, I'd probably have them around number 5 or number 4. So number 6 isn't the worst thing in the world, but I do think they're being underrated preseason, in my opinion. South Dakota is the team I'm not high on that much. I know a lot of people are basing their projections for South Dakota next season based on the fact that this has been a team that has won 10 games in 3 consecutive seasons, but there's a lot of uncertainty about this team. You have to replace quarterback Aiden Bauman, offensive line production, wide receivers, and a head coach. That's a lot of change, and I know that South Dakota had a lot of change last offseason too, but they still had that stabilizing presence in Aiden Bauman. You don't have that anymore. You have to fill in a new quarterback, a new offensive line, new guys have to emerge at wide receiver, new head coach. That's a lot of turnover in a single offseason, and I would not be surprised if a team or two picks them off in the non-conference like we saw last season when they lost to Lamar in the non-conference when no one was expecting them to. So to me, they're being a bit, I don't know, like number 5 is an okay ranking, but I would have them at number 6 because I just think the questions are the most in the conference, and I'm not so confident that they're going to be able to answer all of those questions. Quarterback and offensive line, it's not a good thing to have to replace those in a single offseason. And then you add on top of that you have a new head coach and new wide receivers. It wouldn't surprise me if this team is a bust next season. No offense to South Dakota. I think they have solid players, and the FCS should respect what they've been building the past couple seasons. But I just think I was low on South Dakota last offseason and was completely right with my record projection at 8-4. It wouldn't surprise me if this team finishes around the 500 mark. But again, it depends if this team gels together. Maybe they start slow, but get it rolling like they did late last season. We'll have to see. And then North Dakota, I'll touch on them a bit since I didn't mention them. Quietly one of the deepest rosters in the conference. I think Jerry Kaminsky is going to take a big step. The big thing for him will be reducing those interceptions and then improving completion percentage. I think their offensive lines, defensive lines are among the conference best. And if Kaminsky takes that step that I think he will, UND can absolutely win the conference. All right, before we look at some of these preseason accolades that a couple of our players at YSU got, I'm just going to run through my preseason poll. I'm not going to explain it too much in depth because I've already talked about extensively who I think are the true contenders in this conference. So number 1, South Dakota State. 2, Youngstown State. 3, North Dakota. 4, I'm going to go Illinois State. 5 is Southern Illinois. 6 is South Dakota. 7, Northern Iowa. 8, Indiana State. And then 9, Murray State. Again, I've talked about a lot about the top 3. To me, Southern Ill and Illinois State is a coin flip. I have a lot of confidence in Brock Spack and that coaching staff for Illinois State that they'll be able to figure out something. I think Ty Niekamp is a phenomenal anchor for that defense at middle linebacker. So I think I have some confidence that they'll be able to figure some things out and that their running game will be good enough where the quarterback is not going to be asked to do too much. And then Southern Ill, South Dakota. I think South Dakota is the clear 6th team in my opinion. I know a lot of people are saying that this is a anyone 1 through 6 could win the conference. I'm not so sure about that. To me, Illinois State, South Dakota especially have some questions they got to answer before I can consider that. But again, that's my ranking. Let me know what you guys think. The last thing I want to do here before I get you guys out of here, let's look at some of the national awards we got preseason. Beau Brungard was named to the Walton Payton Award preseason watch list. He's looking to become just the 3rd 2-time Walter Payton Award winner, and then he also received Stats Perform first team preseason All-American. Beau Brungard rightfully so, getting a lot of preseason accolades. Mike Wells was on the Buck Buchanan Award watch list. He's the first YSU defensive player on that watch list since 2016. And then he was also a Stats Perform first team preseason All-American. And then Desmeal Leigh, Stats Perform second team preseason All-American, which, by the way, they should be ashamed of themselves for not putting him in the first team. He's the best offensive tackle prospect in the FCS heading into next season. And he got hosed by Craig Haley again. Doesn't surprise me, but one of the anchors of YSU's veteran offensive line in Desmeal Leigh. And then the last person is Andrew Lastovka, Stats Perform third team preseason All-American. He gives YSU one of the conference's best special teams weapons. So in closing, again, I think South Dakota State deserves to be preseason number one, but I also think Youngstown State has a legitimate argument to be considered the biggest challenger for the conference title. With an elite quarterback, an elite offensive line, I think YSU is going to have a big chance next season. If Ryan Remedio improves this defense, look out, the Penguins could be coming for that conference title and potentially a run to the national championship. That's going to do it for this edition of the Penguin Nation Fans Podcast. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Make sure to leave the show a 5-star review and continue to support the podcast on social media. For now, I'm Gino Leone, and as always, go Gwins.